Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Scale Model Kit Review. Welcome back to another exciting installment of Build the Batmobile by FanHome. Welcome back to Scale Model Kit Review Studio, and welcome back to another fantastic installment of the Build the Batmobile by DeAgostini FanHome. Now, you can only find this at the FanHome website. I'll put a direct link in the description below as well as above. Now, I just received pack number 16, and this includes 6 more stages or phases, phase 81 through 86. Now this, we're going to go ahead and complete the dashboard. We're going to install the dashboard onto the interior chassis area, work on the steering wheel. We're going to work on the front firewall. We're going to install the unique battery that's on the firewall, as well as some of the radiators. So we have a lot to do here, a lot to show you. I hope that my videos have been helpful to you. I try to show you easy ways of getting things installed and clearing up any confusion in the instructions that there may be. Some people have run across that, but anyway, we'll go ahead and start off with the magazine here with this subscription. Of course, it is a magazine subscription, and it's a great little magazine. There's tons of articles and stories in this. Lots of research was done by DeAgostini FanHome. So it starts off with the episode guide. So here, all the way here on pack 16, now we're on episode 81 from season 2, and that aired February 15, 1967. And I don't ever remember seeing the Joker vehicle there, and I wonder if that is still in existence. That's really cool there. And then we get into the Batman Comics Challenge of the Man-Bat, and that's from 1970. And then we go with Batman Year by Year. So this is Batman 06 from January 2006. Batman Monster Men. That's pretty cool there. And got 3 pages worth there. Very nice. And then we get into the step-by-step instructions. In this case, they're talking about the detectoscope and all that that gets mounted on the dashboard. Very good there. Okay, so let's go ahead and get a preview of the parts that we will be assembling in this pack. Phase 81, this is the parts for the dashboard. Phase 82, we continue with more parts for the dashboard. Phase 83 would be the steering wheel and steering shaft. Phase 84, the firewall. Phase 85, the battery for the firewall. That's a very unique looking battery, and I'll show you some photographs of that I found on the internet for the original Batmobile. look at the radiators that are mounted to the Firewall also for 86. Let's get started. Alright, so before I get started, I'd like to apologize for the noise in the background. That is my air conditioner. We're reaching nearly 100 degrees here today, and it's not welcoming, believe me. I'm not looking forward to this summer in southwest Arizona. Anyway, we've had a nice cool spell here lately, and I did purchase an e-bike. You may have noticed that in one of my previous posts, and I've been riding that as much as I can. I've been enjoying it, getting some exercise as I've been sitting down too much. And got a little boo-boo here on my hand. That's from working on my Jeep. I put an off-road bumper on the front of it, and of course, you know, I busted my knuckle on the only sharp part on the front of that Jeep. And that's typical when you work on your own cars, right? So it's looking better though. But so let's go ahead and look at the step-by-step instructions here for the beginning of this video. This would be our detectoscope console, bezel, and screen. So we're going to put that all together. Looks pretty simple here. We're going to retrieve one of the LEDs that's already plugged in on the chassis, and we're going to disconnect it, and we're going to plug it in to the back of that detectoscope, and then we're going to mount that to the dashboard. Then we're going to install the interior floor, and we're just going to turn the chassis on its side to put the 4 screws in, the EP screws that hold that interior floor in place. Now remember, you got a lot of wiring underneath that, so make sure it's correct and your wires are coming out in the right locations on the front here. And what I've noticed, the illustration is pretty good at showing you how things are and how your wires should be, and just kind of pay attention to that and be careful with that. Okay, so that's all we're going to do. Let me get the parts. I'll be right back. Here's the parts for phase 81. AP, EP, and KP screws. We have a bunch of switches and buttons for the scope itself. We have all the parts here for the scope. Everything here is made of plastic. I do like the finish on that. It's a nice gloss black finish. That's wonderful there. Plus we have a chrome plated piece here, and of course the outside bezel for the scope itself is painted up very nicely, and a little arrow for it. Okay, so the first part of the detectoscope is install this little clear piece with the arrow arm assembly. Note that there are some notches on each end. They'll line up with the screw mounts on each side. So should look much like that right there. Now we'll go ahead and mount this to our scope housing assembly itself, and we're just gonna line it up like that and put our KP screws in the back side there. And the screws are installed right there, 2 KPs right there and right there. And that's what that looks like on this side. Turn it back over. We're going to mount the LED housing next onto that. And that's simply just going to go down in there like that. And we're going to put our screw into it. Which will be an AP screw. And there you go, the AP screw is installed. Now we'll go ahead and mount some of the switches and buttons on the top of it here. These are the buttons, part number 81, and note that they're angled where you insert them into the front of the panel. Make sure that matches the direction of that panel. Okay, I have one of the buttons inserted. Now to help me along, I did take an X-Acto blade and I did widen the hole a little bit just to make it easier for me, and I'll go ahead and use some super glue or even some Mr. Hobby cement or extra thin to glue that in place. And for those control knobs and switch, just a little bit of glue is all you need for this. and that should just lock them in place, no problem. Looks very good. And there you go, the detectoscope is complete. I did widen the holes for all the switches and buttons, as well as the little name placard here on the bottom, and then I used the glue on the back side to secure them down. So we need to get our LED and put it in the back here. Alright, the next step was to bring over my chassis, and I needed to find a wire M, which I had taped down on the left side of the chassis here, and they want me to disconnect that. That's going to go into our detectoscope, the LED for that, right there. Next, I just take the LED and we push it in place. Just like that. Bring over the dashboard here, and we're going to put our panel on that, feeding our wire through, and we're going to put 2 screws in on the back side, 2 AP screws. And the screws are put in nice and tight there. I did secure the LED light because it was a little bit loose with some tulip slick, and I've been using that a lot for my LEDs or any of my circuit boards and such. And I put a little bit on the edge there to give it a little more security. But that's how that looks. It looks great. Now we'll go ahead and install the interior floor. Here's our interior floor. I'll just put that aside for now. And if you look at our chassis here, we have 4 spots that it mounts to. One right here, one right there, one over here, and one right there. Now we just want to simply take our interior floor, and if you look at it, you can see our mounting points on the interior floor right there, right there, there, and there. We want to line those up with those 4 spots that we have here. And I'm going to flip it on its side. It's probably easier to do this from looking from the side, and then we can put our screws in from the side also. Okay, so before I screw those down, I just wanted to make sure all my wiring is where it needs to be, and I think this is correct over here with this wire bundle. So M actually needs to be on the right side over here, so I went ahead and taped it in place. And then later on we're going to take K off. We're going to feed that into the other part on the dashboard, so that will be coming off, and that actually is on the left side. What I mean is we have M for this one and the K for this right here for the compass, so they both light up. Okay, so make sure your K is on this side before we put the floor down. Okay, I have all 4 screws installed for the floor assembly, and all 4 EP screws were put in. I made sure they are tight all the way around. I didn't really have to worry about stripping them out or anything. I tightened them down until they stopped turning, so that was pretty good there. Made sure that my wires are clear. The M wire is coming out the front because that's going to go through this area here, okay, to get plugged in for the dashboard. Same with this wire here too. Okay, so both of those will be feeding through. Alright, so that is all I do with phase 81. Let's head over and get started on phase 82. Let's look at the step-by-step instructions for phase 82. Phase 82, we received the parts for the dashboard, and these are some of the parts that kind of go under the dashboard, some switches and such. And you can see the assembly there. Moving on, we're going to install them underneath the dashboard area. That looks good there. Then we're going to retrieve our K wire that I talked about in the previous phase. We're going to unplug that from the chassis. We're going to go ahead and insert that for the compass. And then we're going to install another part on the front of the dashboard, another panel. And then we're going to go ahead and install the dashboard on the interior panels. And then we'll go ahead and plug in our LEDs, K to K and M to M. Just like I was showing you earlier where it goes. Let me get the parts, I'll be right back. Here's those parts. Alright, so we have some AP screws here. We have some more switches here on this sprue tree. We have the panels that get mounted underneath the dashboard, these two here. We have another part here too that gets mounted to those. Now these switches here, ones with the red tops, they were bagged separately. These two switches here were bagged separately, and this single black switch down here was bagged separately. And then of course we have the covers for the dashboard, and those are chrome plated plastic. Okay, I completed the two switch boxes, and you can see that here. Now these switches here, these four, are on the same tree. There's 8 of them. So you have these 4 here, and you have these 4 there. Now be very careful with these. I did the same method here. I went ahead and I took my X-Acto blade and I made the holes a little bit larger. Then I was able to use my tweezers to secure them down, and I used some glue on the back side also. I did have one pop out of my hand, and luckily I found it. And of course here's our 2 switches with the buttons, and this little panel here has the black button in it that came bagged separately. I did the same method there for it and inserted it, so you can kind of see that little knob there. And so these are ready to be installed under the dashboard. We'll do that next. Okay, those little switch panels were installed underneath the dashboard here. You can see that. I did use those AP screws, 4 of them on the back side. And then while I was at it, I installed the 2 switches that came bagged separately, and they went right there. Now we'll go ahead and retrieve that LED from our chassis, LED number K that I showed you earlier in the previous phase. Brought over the chassis, I disconnected wire K from that wire that we looked at earlier, and now this is going to plug in underneath the dashboard into the compass. So just as before, K will go into the bottom of the compass here. And I'm going to go ahead and take my tulip, and I'm going to secure that down with that, kind of hold it in place a little bit better. It's also a good light blocker. Next, we'll bring over these 2 panels we received, and the smaller one of course will go right there. It just snaps over it. It's just a temporary thing, and the larger one beside it, so that everything is covered now, and it makes it look very neat and clean, and they're removable. Looks great. Now we'll go ahead and mount this to the interior chassis area. Alright, so here's the dashboard. It has 4 mounting locations, 2 up front and 1 on each side here. Okay, so we're just going to install the AP screws on the side, so we have 2 mounting points here on each side. Okay, and I just want to make it so that my wiring is kind of where it needs to be there in the middle, and this is going to go down on each side. Okay, AP screw was installed on each side, 1 over here and 1 on the other side, right there. Next I went ahead and plugged in my LEDs, M and M wire, M to M, and you can see that, and K to K. Alright, so we are all set with those, and I'm just going to feed those down inside behind the dash, and that's how that will look. And that completes phase 82. Let's head over and get started on phase 83. Let's look at the build instructions for phase 83. And we'll be working on the steering wheel. Fantastic here. There's all the parts on the left, and we'll be fitting the joysticks and then fitting the steering column and then completing the steering wheel there. Let me get the parts. I'll be right back. Phase 83 parts. Alright, so BM SM screws. This is their steering shaft. It looks like a little U-joint for that. All the parts for the steering wheel here, the joysticks, speedometer, and you can actually read that. It goes from 10 to 150, and the steering wheel. Wow, that is nice. It is made out of metal. It has a great feel to it, and the finish on it is fantastic there. And of course the speedometer bezel there. Plastic chrome. Alright, here's the steering wheel, and we're going to install these, what they call joysticks, onto it. Onto the bottom you'll see there's a couple holes, and these will press fit to those. Alright, so the joysticks are installed. They are a little bit fiddly to do. I had a hard time doing it, and I really couldn't show you on camera as I did it, but they did snap in place. You might want to add a little bit of super glue to them to help hold them in place, but they seem to be pretty secure at this point. But that's what they look like there. Next is to install that U-joint onto the drive shaft, and I installed one of the SM screws on the end there just to kind of give me a little bit of area to hold on to, and then I screwed in the two SM screws on the sides, and I did use some 3-in-1 oil to help me along with that, and it does rotate. So I can go ahead and remove this screw and save it for later, but that's all we do there. Now we're going to install this to the steering wheel. And like I've done before with the steering wheel, I'm going to take my BM screw and I put some 3-in-1 oil on the end of it, and I'm going to get the thread started. Try to do it as straight as I can. And screw it in. Get all the threads started. That looks good there. I'll go ahead and back it out. And that's tight there. Very good. That's how that looks there. Now we'll continue with assembling this. Looks like it's inserted all the way now. Next we take our switches. We're going to install those. So we need to turn this around and insert these from the back side here. Pretty easy there. It just snaps in. And you can see that there. We have some color in there now. Looks great. And we'll take our speedometer and we're going to line up the miles per hour with the black part, and we have some other indicators above. And that goes in just like that. That looks great. So cleaned off the lens a little bit. Now we'll go ahead and mount this to the steering wheel. You have a large hole and a small hole, so we want to line those up with that. And there we go. And mine is loose, so I might just put a little bit of super glue in there. But we'll see. I might use some glossy accents because it won't fog up anything. That's this stuff here. And it dries clear, so that will help lock it in. That way we give it a chance to dry up, and that will lock it in without fogging. Here we go. Looks good. And there you go. That's the overall view of the steering wheel that I assembled. I think it looks great. Fantastic there. That completes phase 83. Let's head over and do phase 84. Up next is phase 84. We'll be working on the front firewall, and it should be pretty simple with this one here. There's the parts on the left. Looks like we're going to install a fuse box, cable from the fuse box, and that's about it. Let me get the parts. I'll be right back. Here's the parts for phase 84. Here's those parts. This is the firewall here, made of plastic. There's the back side and the fuse box there, and the black battery terminal line looks like probably for the fuse box. And it looks like these two parts here just pressed together for the fuse box. Look for the flat edge and put that together like that, and then mounts like that up against the firewall, and we're going to hook our hose, and that's going to go on just like that. Pretty good fit there. If you wanted to super glue it, you could, but that's what that looks like there. So really, that completes phase 84. That's all we do here. Let's head over and do phase 85. Let's look at the step-by-step instructions for phase 85. We're going to be working on the very unique battery for this car, the Lincoln, and it looks pretty simple here. These are the parts, and we'll mount the battery to the bracket, put on the battery terminals, the caps for the battery itself. Go ahead and mount that to the firewall, and then we'll install some cables and such onto that, along with, looks like the starter motor bracket, and looks like a starter solenoid, I believe, of some sorts. And that's what that looks like there, mounted to the firewall. And looks good. So let me get the parts. I'll be right back. Here's the parts for 85. TP screws, the battery itself, and the battery mount bracket, along with the starter solenoid, the yellow caps for the top of the battery, and the battery terminals, and vent plug. And the battery itself mounts to the battery bracket just as such. Make sure that your vent and caps are closer to the firewall side. That's how that looks. 2 TP screws go down on the bottom to hold it all in place. Next, I'll go ahead and put in the terminals for the battery themselves and the caps. Okay, the battery cable terminals were installed. They only go in one way, and the caps were installed also. They actually gave us an extra cap, and that's how that looks there. Now we'll go ahead and complete this, install this to the firewall. Right, the battery gets installed to the center of the firewall, to those 2 holes right there, simply just like that. And then we'll take and put 2 TP screws on the back side. And that's what they look like there. The 2 TP screws are installed. Turn it over, and that's what our battery looks like on the firewall. Now I'll take the fuse box from the previous phase and we'll insert that. It only goes in one way. Just like that. And we'll go ahead and put the starter solenoid in next. We'll put the cap on the end of the starter solenoid. And we'll go ahead and put our cable, our wire, on the end of that. Now our solenoid can go in place, and it press fits. Just like that. That's how that looks there. And bring over the firewall, and we'll put all that right there on those two holes on the right side of the firewall, and we'll put 2 TP screws in from the back side. Okay, the 2 TP screws are installed and they're tight. Flip it over. I took our cable running off the fuse box over to this terminal lead. I did shorten it just a little bit, and that's how that looks there. So there you go. That completes stage 85. Let's head over and do the final stage for this video, stage 86. Alright, let's get started on phase 86. I've been calling them stages also. The magazine does call it as a phase for whatever reason, but we'll go ahead and do this. This is the final phase for this video, pack 16. So I look forward to 17 to show up. Here we're going to install the power steering reservoir and a couple of the radiators and such. So that's what the parts look like. I work on the power steering pump, and then we'll attach that to the firewall over there on the right. Then we'll go ahead and install the 2 radiators, one on each side there, and then we'll install those hoses there. We have to do some cutting here, I believe, make some measurements and cut. So let me get the parts. I'll be right back. Here's the parts for 86. AP screws. Here's some of our hoses for the radiator, power steering pump, and the 2 radiators, and a couple more hoses. Okay, so I assembled the power steering pump, and I press fit the gold piece onto the housing here, and it was a bear to do. I actually had to use some pliers very carefully so I didn't break it off, but it only goes on one way. Okay, and then I press fit this part here, the smaller one, and that's a hose connector, and you hook up your shorter hose to that and the longer one to that. Now we're really ready to mount this to the firewall. Okay, the power steering pump is installed with an AP screw on the back side there. Very fiddly. I went ahead, what I did is I got the screw started on the mount point, took the screw out, then I put it up there, and it was easy to install it from there on. So that looks great. Now let's go ahead and work on these radiators. So we're going to put these radiators in on the both ends here, and looking to see how they go here. Looks like our hose connectors would go on top, just like that. And once again, more AP screws on the back side. We're going to do this on both sides. Okay, so both radiators are installed with the AP screws on the back side. You can see that right there and right there. And I went ahead and I cut the hoses as required. I measured them with my digital caliper here. It goes in millimeter or inches, but in this case for millimeter. So in this case here, the left radiator, the outside one, requires 100 millimeter. The inside is 70, and the inside of the other one on the right side is 75 millimeter and 95 millimeter for the outside. I did super glue them in place, help hold them in place, and that should be good. So that's all I do for phase 86. I'll be right back. And that's all I do with pack 16. Had a blast doing this. We got a lot done. We got the interior bolted down here, screwed down that is, and I just put the firewall up front, but we did complete most of the firewall. Of course, that will go up front just like that. And of course, the dashboard is installed. Just 2 screws on the sides, and I went ahead and I put the steering wheel in place there. I just kind of dry fitted in place, but that looks great there. Looks fantastic. So this is a great build. I do know that this was a sellout, so it's not currently available, but I'm sure when DeAgostini or FanHome does another release of this, you'll know about it. You'll see it on social media. So I do highly recommend this, and it really is coming along. There's a lot involved with this, and I'm having a blast building. It's a lot of fun. Do head over to FanHome and see what other cars they have available. They have a lot of great stuff over there, and I highly recommend their kits here lately. So with that, happy modeling everybody, and take care. We'll see you with pack 17.